Welcome here in Brussels, in the Press Club Brussels, Europe, for a press conference on Laos. Democracy in Laos, because today the diaspora and human rights defenders in Laos and outside Laos, for them it's a special day today. It is the Laos Democracy Day. The diaspora from Laos has chosen this date and this place. Why? First, because the European Union is a major player in human rights and in the fight for rule of law. And second, the European Union is not only the European Commission, sort of government, the European Parliament, the legislative branch, but as well, it is a place where all the presidents and prime ministers of the European Union member states are coming together 3, 4, 5, 6 days a year, times a year. And this is today. Therefore, there's a helicopter flying over this building and the neighboring buildings. Therefore, there's a police outside, and now in some minutes, all the presidents and prime ministers will arrive here just in front of your press conference for their meeting, for their two-day meeting, and this evening you will see in the media what they have decided. And as all this attention is now on Brussels today and tomorrow, the opposition from Laos, the human rights defenders, have chosen this date and this place for their press conference. Therefore, thank you very much that you are all here. And I'm here only the moderator. The real person who is running the show here is Butone. Therefore, please, Butone.
Thank you, Franz. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I would like to tell about situation in Laos and our appeal to the European Parliament and European Commission. We, the Alliance for Democracy in Laos, ADL, the global network for human rights and democracy activists for Laos and our allied organizations from the ASEAN countries, are here in Brussels in front of the European Parliament to demonstrate this morning for democracy and human rights in Laos and in Southeast Asia. Laos is a one-party dictatorship with no freedom of expression, no freedom of assembly, and no freedom of the press. This is why we are forced to demonstrate here today. Anyone who protests peacefully in Laos for freedom and against conditions in Laos will be sentenced to prison up to 20 years plus a fine for their terrorism or defamation. Sort like cases of 3 bloggers in 2017 and Miss Moy in 2019. This picture. Time and against human rights activists disappeared or are murdered in Laos. The case of Ot Sanyawong, who disappeared in 2019, and Sombat Sompon disappeared in 2012. The freedom of religion has also not been realized, and this despite official training to accept religion freedom. Despite enormous natural resources and raw material deposit in Laos, the country is still one of the poorest in the world. The main problem of the Lao PDR in addition to the dictatorship is the massive corruption in every stage in the administration. International aid is still a victim of the corruption. Most of this aid didn't reach in the people. The EU rightly pointed to the implementation of the 160 recommendations accepted by the Laos government in 2020. At the UPR of the UN Human Rights Council, like the EU observer, we have not yet seen any improvement. We see that the situation is going much worse in the Laos PDR. The whole world is watching the cruel and terrible war in Ukraine started by Russia. The Laos PDR indirectly support Russia's aggression. When the UN General Assembly voted to exclude Russia from the Human Rights Council, the Laos PDR voted against the exclusion. The Laotian government has decreed that oil from Russia should now be imported. This is a clear circumvention for the embargoes. We have also received information from our activists in Laos that Russia, together with China, is looking for raw materials and also wants to establish itself militarily in the region. A new big military base is planned in the Xiangkhouang province for the control of Southeast Asia. But the people in Laos are not only oppressed by their own government, but there is also discrimination by China and Vietnam. The government of Laos is heavily indebted to China. In return, the government gives generous land concession to Chinese investors. Likewise, with Vietnam, Laos sees a debt to pay back the brotherhood of arms in the Indochina's war. About 45% of the land area of Laos now belong to the investors. The consequences of this policy are devastating land grabs, environmental destruction, and disenfranchisement of the Lao people are recent. The government of Laos made long-term land leases for 99 years in many provinces, mainly with China. Hardly any jobs are created in Laos is a result of mega projects carried out by China and other investors. The investors bring the workforce from their countries themselves. This is planned to settle 20 million Chinese people in Laos. This makes the Laotian a minority in their our country. The European Union is one of the main investors in development aid in Laos. In investment volume of 470 million euro in planned for the Green Team Europe initiative in Laos 2025. Projects against deforestation in Laos have failed in the past. Today, there is hardly any rainforest left in Laos. The rampant dam projects that create a green energy have only led to greater environmental destruction through further deforestation and heavily fluctuating water level in Mekong River. Other consequences are land grabs and loss of important agriculture areas. However, there are many other environmental issues in Laos that negatively impact climate change. The river, the rivers are increasingly being contaminated with chemicals from chemical factories and mines. The permaculture with banana and rubber plantation are accepting the ecological balance and poisoning the environment with pesticides. None of these projects bring Laos money for development. The money is almost exclusively given to investors and corrupt officials. The EU states that it works with many CSO in Laos on the ground. Unfortunately, none of the CSO are real NGOs. Rather, they are government-controlled organizations, so-called Congos. With the help of such organizations and corrupt officers on the ground, much of the international aid money sipped into Laos' corruption swamp. But we also see the problem of human trafficking and the associated crime of forced prostitution, slave labor, and drug trafficking, which also plays an important role. So far, the state institutions in Laos have not taken any action to effectively help the victim. In the contrary, they support the human trafficker by issuing false papers to the migrant and demanding double tax and fees from the migrant worker and their family. Drug trafficking is also encouraged by giving foreign investors special privilege, such as the King Roman Casino in Bokeo province. We therefore appeal to the EU. First, use projects like the Green Team Europe initiative to promote and control green environmental protection. Second, violations of international treaties and agreements must be sanctioned more strongly by the EU. If the human rights standards are violated, aid payment must be cancelled. Third, work with independent NGO to stop funds disappearing. Aid fund may no longer be paid to the Laotian state, but exclusively to the citizens of Laos. Fourth, bilateral agreements and development aid must also be made with a view to the UPR recommendations. The Lao PDR has to implement the freedom of expression, of assembly, freedom of the press, and on other UN and on other UN human rights principles. Fifth, the European supply chain law often an excellent instrument for the implementation of human rights through convention contracts. We therefore call for the consistent implementation of the existing law and, if necessary, the tightening of the law. Six, we also demand the release of all political prisoners in the Lao PDR, including Ms. Muay and 3 Lao bloggers. On behalf of all people fighting for freedom, human rights and democracy, not only in Laos, but also in other parts of the world, including Ukraine or Cambodia. We thank you for your attention. Dr. Bunthorn Chantalawong Visa, the President of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos and participation with Alliance for Democracy in Laos chapter from Germany, France, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Spain, Switzerland, Cambodia, in Thailand, and in Laos. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bunthorn. We stay with Laos, but we are leaving Belgium, we are leaving even Europe. We are going now to the Pacific. We are going to Hawaii, and there we will listen to Joshua Cooper, who's sitting there with his red shirt. And for him, I think it is not afternoon, it's night or early morning. I think it's 2 o'clock with you. Please, Joshua.
Danke, Frank. Great to see everyone this morning. It's true, it's 2:30 in the morning, so a little early, but never a time to sleep when we think of the conditions of what the people in Laos face. So it's an honor to join you today and to participate on this historic day, focusing on democracy and dignity for all inside Southeast Asia, specifically as we're looking today on Laos. And what I thought I'd focus on today is really the end of empire and focusing on engaging for equality for all. And when we look at Laos, we find people who have been battling for centuries for those fundamental freedoms that many of us living in the West appreciate, but have really accepted without that imminent initiative to really stand up for what we believe in. And what is so important is if we look at the world today, we do know out of the 7 billion around the world, up to 4 of those billion actually live under tyranny. And I think what's so exciting being there in Brussels today, and unfortunately being there really almost 3 months on the commemoration of the illegal invasion and unjust war by Russia, is the bravery and also the beauty of the resilience and the resistance of the Ukrainian people have inspired everyone to really remember what it means to be free and why we should all stand up against tyranny and against leaders who do not appreciate the order that exists rooted in the rule of law, but also guaranteeing good governance and human rights for all people. So when we meet today, we know that there are people inside Laos who are standing up, who want a better world, but have not received the recognition and have not become a priority in public policy at the regional level with the EU and also in international institutions. And what we've done with Alliance for Democracy in Laos is to raise those issues and to begin with the human rights defenders. In fact, also the environmental human rights defenders who we see are growing every year, people who stand up for their sacred piece of land where they live and face the ultimate price. One of those, of course, is Sombat Sompon, who was a person who could have left, who could have gone to the West, but stood his ground and continued to work with the youth to have a future of freedom. And for doing that, unfortunately, he has been enforced disappeared, and his case remains one that is open, but one that we can't say the government has taken seriously or done anything to ensure his basic human rights. And of course, when we look at enforced disappearances and we talk about Sombat Sompon and other more recent cases, we know this is something that's not new. Ever since the actions by the regime to ignore the treaties that have been written, you can see this from the time of Tubi Lifeng in the mid-1970s all the way until today. And so we ask that the European Union, we ask that leaders start to focus and demand results. This is one of the points that it's an honor to raise, especially with the leaders of the diaspora who are in Europe, but also in Australia and Canada and around the world, because there's a double price they pay. First, they had to pay by being forced to leave. And second, now we see their taxes even being used to support this regime that has done nothing to uphold human rights. And so we must come up with legislation, and we must have foreign policies in each of these countries that is rooted in international human rights law and demands dignity for all people inside those borders who are demanding a better future for their country. And not to mention, these are allies. When we look at this quest to end empire, these are people who yearn for freedom and democracy and who must be supported the same way that we're now supporting the people of Ukraine. So that's the first aspect, is looking at standing up these totalitarian regimes and living for liberty and demanding dignity and democracy for all. The second area is also allies in the pursuit to protect our planet. And we can see that in two ways. One, we know with the Paris Agreement that we really only have less than 7 years to make sure that we can save our planet. And the people there inside Laos are standing up against these rampant land grabs, against these deforestation projects that would do nothing but just to make a small group of elite business people from China benefit and deepen their pockets while actually bringing us closer to utter destruction and making sure that we would all face more catastrophes due to the climate crisis. So we must continue to organize and prepare for the COP27 in Egypt this year to make sure that the voice of Lao human rights and earth defenders is heard, but more importantly, that the forest remains intact. And we have to make sure not only is there reforestation, but afforestation to make sure that that land is protected and promoted. The second area, and I'd say the one area we should really concentrate on around the Paris Agreement, is the global stocktake. We have to make sure that the world knows how much Laos is and is not doing to make sure that the land is protected. This is known as the important Paris Agreement. This is known as the important aspect that we have to focus on to make sure that this land is guaranteed for future generations. And this is something, of course, that's very important, because next week we'll be looking at Stockholm plus 50, where the world first came together and pointed out that we have to take care of this land for future generations, which is also an ethic of the Lao culture. The second area is sustainable development. And we know there'll be EU days coming up in June, where they look at development and look at the foreign policy going forward. And we know when we look at Laos and we look at development assistance, it has to be rooted in the rule of law and must protect the people inside the borders who are saying no more dams, not another dam, because these dams, unfortunately, any electricity that's even generated doesn't go to the people, and unfortunately just impacts people downstream, all the way down to the Mekong Delta, where the indigenous peoples live, who are also rice farmers. And we have to make sure that there's no more dams that then continue to impact the life of people downriver and have a more holistic perspective. And we look at the sustainable development goals, those in a way are a formula for freedom, to end poverty, make sure there's zero hunger, to make sure there's good health and well-being of all people. And if we look at all indicators, we see, unfortunately, the people of Laos are leading in those worst indicators no one would ever want. Then there's also quality education. The people of Laos desire SDG number 4, but there's never enough funds for those. And of course, SDG 5, gender justice. If we look at the leadership inside Laos, it's a patriarchal and dictatorial, denying women their role in making sure that they can hold up half the sky and make Laos a better place for all people going forward. And then if we look at 6 and 7, renewable energy and clean water, too many people in Laos are sick without these important aspects. And that's really the way to go forward. What we look at with renewable energy is there's so much technology that can be used that's transformative, that makes sure that every person in Laos would be able to build off-grid, to be able to have a strong future that then in a way democratizes energy and shows the youth a way that they can go forward. And then of course that leads into all the issues we care about, looking at good jobs, looking at infrastructure and innovation, looking at ending inequality, and more importantly, looking at those important issues of responsible consumption and production, as well as the important issues of climate action, life below land, life on land, and of course, SDG 16, most important, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And that's why we're here, to ask the EU to just make sure that their future policies, that potential resolutions that could be adopted, actually live up to this and guarantee the people in Laos that the values that they're standing up for are actually being supported on the global and regional level. And the last one is partnerships. And that's what we're looking at today, is what we can do to provide positive partnerships with the people inside Laos to make sure that their voice is heard. And we see this every time we organize at the ASEAN People's Forum and the ASEAN Civil Society Conference. You see Alliance for Democracy in Laos representing the people inside who are demanding a new direction going forward. And this is what we must secure today. And that's why it's an honor to be with you in this important meeting. And the final area, of course, is human rights. And the Human Rights Council session will begin the 50th session of the Human Rights Council next month. And that's an important time when we make sure that the importance of these issues are at the forefront. And there'll be a brand new special procedure, a rapporteur on climate change and human rights. And we think he, of course, should visit Laos to be able to document the true reality of what the people are facing. So it's an honor to be with you today. And thank you so much for allowing me to share some brief points. But we have to remember that too many people around the planet are not able to have these critical conversations and are being denied their fundamental freedoms. And we must make an alliance, not only of democracy in Laos, but an alliance of those demanding democracy for all. Because this is the time we see, if we do not take strong action against dictators, they will continue to push. They will continue to threaten our neighbors. They will continue to defy the global order that was established now 77 years ago. Also, next month, we do recall the UN Charter, that important meeting that took place in 1945 that we commemorate on June 26th, when the countries of the world said never again. But for the people inside Laos and Southeast Asia, those words are not being lived up to. And we must demand for the peoples around the planet that we agree with the principles of the UN Charter and we the peoples, guaranteeing equality for all. So thank you so much. And it's an honor to participate in Brussels at the Press Club today. And we're glad you're there as the world leaders are meeting to look at the most imminent issues that people face. Mahalo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joshua Cooper. He's normally, when he's not speaking to us, he's professor at the University in Hawaii, and he's a director of the Hawaii Institute for Human Rights, and he's very active with the United Nations. We realized it when he mentioned the Human Rights Council, which will meet in Geneva. We are coming now to the French participation here. We are waiting now for Somfet Vananu, who will speak to us, and as understood, you will be interpreted by Buntom Chanta. Please come here.
Monsieur, Madame, bonjour. ขอขอบใจท่านประธานข้าพเจ้าสมเพชรวัฒนูประธานองค์การพันธมิตรเพื่อประชาธิปไตยในลาวสาขาประเทศฝรั่ง
Thank President Dr. Bunton here with us today. My name is Sompat Vatanu, President of Alliance for Democracy in Laos, French chapter.
ดร.บุญทรจันทรวงศ์วิเซอร์เป็นประธานศูนย์กลางขององค์การพันธมิตรเพื่อประชาธิปไตยในลาวอยู่ที่ประเทศเยอรมันและท่านก็อยู่ที่นี้ร่วมกับพวกเขา
And I am as well Vice President of Global Network of ADL here with us today, whose head office is in Germany.
ข้าพเจ้าขอขอบใจท่านประธานที่ให้ข้าพเจ้าเป็นตัวแทนให้พี่น้องประชาชนลาวภายในประเทศผู้ที่ถูกผลกระทบจากการปกครองของเผด็จการ
I represent the Lao people living in the country with your authorization, President, and I thank you for that. The people live under the dictatorship with the single party.
เกี่ยวกับการยึดที่ดินบอนอยู่อาศัยปลูกฝังและเลี้ยงสัตว์ของประชาชนลาวจากพรรคประชาชนปฏิบัติลาว
The revolutionary of Lao people create a lot of concern and difficulty by the land grabbing.
เพื่อหาผลประโยชน์ที่แอบอ้างยึดเอาที่ดินที่อยู่อาศัยปลูกฝังเลี้ยงสัตว์อันเป็นอาชีพหลักในการดำรงชีวิตของประชาชนลาวด้วยการอ้างว่าเป็นการพัฒนาประเทศและสร้างเวียกเฮ็ดงานทำให้ประชาชนลาว
As a means of development with opportunity for job creation. On the contrary, people need land as a place of residence, as a place for agriculture and livestock.
ดังที่ข้าพเจ้าจะกล่าวต่อลงไปนี้
I'm going to present to you right now.
แม้นโครงการสร้างเขตเศรษฐกิจพิเศษเช่นว่าการสร้างคาสิโนคิงโรมันอยู่สามเหลี่ยมค้ำคาสิโนเมืองต้นเพิ่งแข่งบ่อแก้วคาสิโนภูเขาควายแข่งเวียงจันทน์คาสิโนสวรรค์เวกัสแข่งสวรรค์เขตและที่อื่นๆ
A special economic zone, for example, the construction of casinos, King Roman near the Golden Triangle, Casino in Tonpeng District, Bokeo Province, Casino Phu Quai Mountain near Capitan Vientiane, Savan Vegas Casino, Savannah Kate Province.
2. การสร้างทางรถไฟจีนลาวในความยาว414กิโลเมตรผลสะท้อนประชาชนลาว 4,400 ครอบครัวได้ถูกโยกย้ายออกที่ดินของเขาเจ้า
The construction of Cheney Laotian train with a length of 414 kilometers moving away, 4,400 family.
3. โครงการสร้างเขื่อนไฟฟ้าที่เกินขอบเขตถึง88เขื่อนและยังจะสร้างต่อไปอีกได้100เขื่อนในทั่วประเทศ
Dam construction program, more than necessary, up to 100 throughout the country. Currently 88 operational.
4.โครงการขุดค้นบ่อแฮแบบสาสายทั่วประเทศได้กวมเอาเนื้อที่ของประเทศถึง 3.76 ส่วนห้อยของพื้นที่ประเทศลาวใน 236,800 ตารางกิโลเมตร
Nationwide mining program encompassing 30 to 70% of the 236 kilometers square around the country.
5. โครงการพัฒนาตัวเมืองใส่ที่ดินของประชาชนลาวตามตัวเมืองน้อยใหญ่ทั่วประเทศ
Development of new towns on the land of the people of all sizes around the country.
6. โครงการสร้างค่ายทหารใส่ที่ดินของประชาชนทหารข่มขู่ประชาชนว่าดินบ้านดินนาดินปลูกฝังของประชาชนเป็นที่อยู่มาหลายชั่วคนเป็นดินของทหาร
The population are forced to abandon the ancestral land for construction of the military camp.
พวกโครงการที่ข้าพเจ้าได้ยกขึ้นมาเป็นตัวอย่างนี้และยังมีอีกหลายๆร้อยโครงการที่ข้าพเจ้าบ่ได้กล่าวถึงนั้น
The 6th point that I have just mentioned.
บ่มีผลประโยชน์ที่ประชาชนลาวได้รับอันเหมาะสมแต่อย่างใดและเป็นการทำลายธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมอย่างมหาศาลอีก
Do not serve the interests of the Lao people. No profit to be made from them. On the contrary, is increased poverty among vulnerable people and causes massive destruction of environment.
ในทางกลกันข้ามแม้นได้เพิ่มทวีความทุกข์ยากให้แก่ประชาชนลาวขึ้นไปเรื่อยๆ
Okay. So,
ด้วยเหตุผลของความบ่เป็นธรรมให้กับประชาชน
because of this injustice,
1. ข้าพเจ้าขอเรียกร้องมายังพวกทานที่เป็นผู้นำประเทศที่ปกครองด้วยระบบประชาธิปไตยและมีความเจริญทางด้านวัฒนธรรมและความเจริญก้าวหน้าทางด้านเทคโนโลยีแบบทันสมัยเนาะเช่นสหภาพยุโรปและประเทศสมาชิกของสหภาพยุโรปทุกๆประเทศที่ได้ให้การช่วยเหลือแก่สปป.ลาว
I launched an appeal to all the leaders of the free and democratic world of culture, of progress with modern technology, as in Europe and the allied country.
นำใช้การช่วยเหลือทั้งหมดนั้นเป็นเงื่อนไขผลักดันให้สปป.ลาวปฏิบัตินับถือสิทธิมนุษย์อยู่ในสปป.ลาวและให้เปลี่ยนแปลงระบบการปกครองไปเป็นการปกครองแบบประชาธิปไตย
To use development aid to create the condition for lobbying and demanding respect for human rights to change of the political system with this multi-party system according to the will of the citizen.
2. ขอเรียกร้องให้พวกท่านมีเงื่อนไขให้ผู้นำสปป.ลาวเปิดให้สิทธิ์แก่รัฐบาลยุโรปให้มีส่งผู้คณะกรรมการตรวจสอบการช่วยเหลือเข้าไปตรวจสอบทุกๆโครงการที่สปป.ลาวได้รับไปนั้น
Demand monitoring and control condition from Lao government to European commissioners to act freely on all programs that the Lao government has accepted.
3. เปิดให้องค์การที่บ่ขึ้นกับรัฐบาลของคนลาวเชื้อชาติลาวอยู่นอกประเทศที่ได้ถูกรับรู้จากองค์การสากลเข้าไปเคลื่อนไหวอยู่ในสปป.ลาวโดยบ่มีการถูกจับกุมและข่มขู่จากรัฐบาลหรือใช้อำนาจท้องถิ่น
Allow NGOs recognizing by international bodies with activists of Lao origin living abroad to campaign freely in the country without being disturbed or arrested.
4. เปิดให้มีหน่วยงานองค์การสากลเข้าไปกวดสอบการซ่อโกงเข้าไปติดตามเบิ่งการบริหารของรัฐบาลสปป.ลาวเพื่อให้คำแนะนำแก่รัฐบาลสปป.ลาวให้มีการบริหารประเทศด้วยความโปร่งใสและขาวสะอาดของการบริหารประเทศ
Authorize the International Commission of Control Against Corruption for more monitoring of governance in transparency and clarity and give recommendation if necessary.
5. เปิดให้มีองค์การนิรโทษกรรมสากลเข้าไปกวดสอบการเฮ็ดเวียกของกระทรวงยุติธรรมของสปป.ลาวเพื่อให้นักโทษที่ถูกคุมขังได้รับความเป็นธรรม
Allow the International Court of Justice to access to criminal case file of the Ministry of the Lao government in order to know if the prisoners are treated fairly.
6. เปิดให้นักข่าวสามารถเก็บกำข้อมูลข่าวสารนำมาเผยแพร่ได้แบบเสรีโดยปราศจากการควบคุมของรัฐบาลและอำนาจท้องถิ่น
Allow a free press to disseminate information without coercion from government or local power.
ข้าพเจ้าขอเรียกร้องพวกท่านมานี่ก็หวังอย่างยิ่งว่าพวกท่านต้องช่วยให้คำเรียกร้องนี้เกิดเป็นรูปธรรมในเวลาแต่นี้ต่อไป
I hope my appeal that I have just launched around you support to make them succeed in the future.
ข้าพเจ้าขอขอบใจนำพวกท่านเป็นอย่างสูงที่ได้ให้เกียรติรับฟังคำเรียกร้องของข้าพเจ้าและขอขอบใจเป็นอย่างสูงแทนประชาชนลาวที่อยู่ภายในประเทศเช่นเดียวกันขอขอบใจ
On behalf of the Lao people that I respect, I represent, and myself, we say a big thank to all of you for listening. Thank you for your attention.
ด้วยความเคารพและนับถือทุกท่านที่ประเทศเบนชิกเมืองบวกเซนวันที่30เดือนพฤษภาคมปี2020สมเพชรวัฒนูขอขอบใจว่า2022
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sompet Patano and Bhutan Chantia. From France, we are going now to Germany, and we will listen to Markus Wiese. Please, Markus.
Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Markus Wiese. I'm the office manager of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos headquarters in Germany. As a global network on human rights and democracy activists for Laos, the Alliance for Democracy in Laos, is it loud enough here? No. The Alliance for Democracy in Laos has information on all relevant topics from different sources. One source is our activists in Laos, a neighboring country, who can tell us by firsthand what is going on in Laos. Another source is our international offices, which collect news from around the world. Also relevant are our collaborations with other NGOs and reporters that we work with, especially the collaboration with Radio Free Asia, RFA. We have reported repeatedly in the past on the problem of human trafficking and the related problem of drug trafficking. A brief explanation how it all happens. Mostly, young Laotians, but both women and men, are recruited by a dubious agency for a job or a training position in neighboring countries, most often in Thailand. Due to the economic hardship and the lack of future prospects in Laos, most accept such an offer. If these are minors, officials are often bribed to provide these young people with forged papers on which these young people are then identified as adults. Once abroad, more than forced into forced labor, slave labor, forced prostitution, and forced marriage. This is where the corrupt authorities in Laos came into play. In that they double tax income that is already legal or illegal taxed on demanded fees from the relatives who remain in Laos for the permission to work abroad. So that the young people don't get an idea for protesting against these conditions or against the regime. They are forced to extend their papers in Laos. On their return in Laos, critical young people are arrested or sentenced to draconian prison terms. So the case of Ms. Lot Tamabong, the case of Mr. Sompon Pimasom and Mr. Sukai Chaitat in 2017. This is a particularly well-known case. Since the situation seems hopeless to many young people, many take refuge in drug use or became drug dealers themselves. Largely hidden from the global public, Laos remains one of the largest producers of opium products and methamphetamines. Recently, Thai media revealed that the Botan Casino in the special economy zone, not the Botan, King Roman Casino, the special economy zone in the Bokeo province, which is run by a Chinese investor with excellent ties to the government officials, serves as a drug hub. But what is the communist government of Laos doing to combat this problem? We are told by local and German tourists in Laos that drugs and drug-infused foods such as tea are very easy to get. Locals talk about drugs being handled like candies. Apparently, the police on the street don't care much what's going on in front of their eyes. While in the neighboring countries of Thailand or Malaysia, one can certainly observe that the police there are busting up whole smuggling rings. In Laos, one can only see that mostly only small drug dealers are caught by the police. We only see alibi function in these actions of the authorities in Laos. Drug addicts who are caught by the authorities or turn themselves into the authorities are put in camps where they are often mistreated. We can be no talk here of a therapy. It's as it customary in the EU country. As with drug trafficking, the authorities also deal with drug trafficking and human beings. The large gangs of traffickers are spared, but individual forced laborers or forced prostitutes are punished from time to time. After analyzing all these facts, our employees came to the following conclusion. Obviously, this government has no interest in a sustainable solution of all of these problems. This is mainly due to the fact that far too many in the state's apparatus earn money from corruption or even directly involved on all of these problems. On the other hand, Laos is so dependent on foreign investors who are also involved. We remind you the special economy zone in Bokeo, that the authorities are practically forced not to do much about these abuses. But ladies and gentlemen, we would not be the Alliance for Democracy in Laos if we didn't also have proposed solutions. Solution number one. In June 2011, the United Nations adopted the guiding principles on business and human rights. They are independent to prevent violations of human rights by business enterprises and define the state's duty to protect and cooperate, responsibility for respecting human rights in global supply chains. In Germany, for an example, this has been the case since 2021, called supply chain law. We demand the consistent implementation of such laws in the European Union and its partners so that products and services that are created through forced labors are blocked, and so the money supply of this criminal industry is cutting off. Solution number two. If the government in Laos is not willing for an actively fight human or drug trafficking, then others have to do it. With the help of the European Union, the police in neighboring countries should be developed into a powerful tool against these dealers. Likewise, aid program for young people who have escaped for forced labors, forced prostitution, and drug addiction must be increased. These young people are not the perpetrators. They are the victims of an inhuman system who can be helped with the rehabilitation and training programs. Solution number three. Corruption paralyzes Laos not only with these problems, but also with almost all other problems. Therefore, corruption must be effectively ended. All previous measures taken in Laos have failed. Because of this, the whole system needs to be reformed. Public controls with more transparency and associated freedom of opinion and freedom of press must be introduced for this purpose. We can observe that more transparency also means less corruption, especially look at the Scandinavian countries. There we can see it very clear. Regardless of whether you opt of a multi-party system, directly democracy, and another model, free or fair elections can help here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Markus Wiese. We are staying with Laos, but indirectly, because we are now going to Cambodia. And the situation is similar in Cambodia and Laos. Therefore, we have invited Raksa Sam, living in France, to address us today. Please, and she will speak in French. Therefore, I will translate immediately into English. Please, Raksa.
Bonjour. Bonjour tout le monde. Salutations de la diaspora du Cambodge.
Greetings from the diaspora for Cambodia.
Je parle ici au nom de ONG Justice pour le Cambodge, le Vol Khmer Diaspora Network, le mouvement populaire Rumdul Cambodgien Europe.
Elle parle ici, no, she's speaking here on behalf of the NGO Justice for Cambodia, the World Khmer Diaspora Network, and the Cambodian Rumdul movement.
Le Laos et le Cambodge sont des pays voisins.
Laos and Cambodia are neighboring countries.
Nous partageons beaucoup d'aspects communs.
We share many common aspects.
Aspects qui expliquent pourquoi je suis ici présente.
Which explain why I'm here present today.
These aspects sont.
These 10 aspects are the following.
1. Notre culture, nos vêtements, notre nourriture et nos danses sont très similaires.
Our culture, our clothing, our food, and our dance are very similar.
2. Au fil des siècles, il y a eu des mariages entre des Laotiens et des Cambodgiens.
Over the century have been many marriages between people from Laos and Cambodia.
Les plus célèbres sont certainement du XIVe siècle et du XXe siècle.
The most famous are certainly from the 14th and from the 15th century.
Au IVe siècle, le fils du roi du Laos épouse une princesse du Cambodge.
In the 14th century, the son of the king of Laos married a princess from Cambodia.
Au XXe siècle, le roi du Cambodge a épousé une femme du Laos.
In the 20th century, the Cambodian king married a woman from Laos.
3. Nous deux, Laos et Cambodge, sommes confrontés à des voisins beaucoup plus grands.
We too, Laos and Cambodia, are confronted with neighbors which are much bigger.
Et ces voisins beaucoup plus grands sont à certains moments des histoires découpées des morceaux et de notre territoire.
And these much bigger neighbors have, at certain moments of history, cut away pieces of our territory.
4. Nous deux, Laos et Cambodge, sommes bénis avec des matières premières précieuses et une variété de produits agricoles exquis.
4th point, we too, Laos and Cambodia, are blessed with precious raw materials and a variety of exquisite agricultural goods.
5. Nous deux, Laos et Cambodge, sommes situés le long du Mekong, ce fleuve long de plusieurs kilomètres qui influence notre climat et nos moyens de subsistance.
5th point, we too, Laos and Cambodia, are situated along the Mekong, this thousands of kilometers long river, which is influencing our climate and our livelihood.
6. Nous deux, Laos et Cambodge, avons été fortement influencés par la guerre américaine au Vietnam, qui a également dévasté à nos pays et nos structures gouvernementales.
We too, Laos and Cambodia, have been heavily influenced by the US war in Vietnam, devastating our countries and our government structures as well.
7. Nous deux, Laos et Cambodge, avons eu des interventions militaires étrangères.
7th point, we too, Laos and Cambodia, have had foreign military interventions.
8. Nous deux, Laos et Cambodge, avons maintenant des régimes autocratiques qui ne respectent ni les droits humains ni l'état de droit.
8th point, we too, Laos and Cambodia, have now autocratic regimes which do not respect neither human rights nor rule of law.
9. Nous deux, Laos et Cambodge, souffrons parce que l'élite corrompue et nos capitales respectives explorent nos matières premières et nos produits agricoles à leur propre fin.
9th point, we too in Laos and Cambodia are suffering because the corrupt elite in our respective capitals are exploiting our raw materials and our agricultural goods for their own purposes.
10. Nous deux, Laos et Cambodge, avons maintenant un système politique où l'opposition à l'intérieur du pays est impossible.
10th and last point, we too, Laos and Cambodia, have now a political system where opposition within the country is impossible.
Par conséquent, nous avons été contraints de quitter nos deux pays, Laos et le Cambodge, et exhorter la communauté internationale, en particulier l'Union européenne, à arrêter la coopération économique avec l'élite corrompue de nos deux pays.
Therefore, all of us here have been forced to leave our two countries, Laos and Cambodia, and to urge the international community, especially the European Union, to stop the economic cooperation with the corrupt elites in our two countries.
Nous deux, opposition du Laos et du Cambodge, demandons à la communauté internationale de travailler plutôt avec les acteurs de la société civile en dehors de nos deux pays.
We, too, opposition from Laos and Cambodia, ask therefore the international community to work instead with the civil society actors outside our two countries.
Merci beaucoup pour votre attention.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes.
Yes, and now we are just going to the other side of, now we are leaving Europe and we are going to the other side of the globe, to Australia. And it is now the floor for Mr. Feng Saksadi. Please. Greetings to Australia.
Sabaydi. Bonjour. It's Kaday from Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ronnie Peng Saksadi, President for the Alliance for Democracy in Laos, Chapter Australia. Welcome all to Democracy Day for Laos and Cambodia, and of course Vietnam. I would say for all over the world, China, Russia, Myanmar, everywhere that are governed by authoritarian regime. As speaker before me, Dr. Bunthorn, Dr. Joshua Cooper, Sompet, and Bunholm, Mr. Marcus Erickson, thank you very much. I'm very sorry that I can't be there with you. I would love to be there with you to demonstrate why we need this Democracy Day for Laos, Cambodia, and all over the world. For we understand that authoritarian regime is oppressing the country and corrupting its population. I will concentrate on Laopedia being the puppet subject of three dominant power countries, Vietnam, China, and Russia. With Vietnam, the Treaty of Friendship signed in 1977 on the 18th of July and to be renewed in July this year for 45 years treaty is no good for the country. The subject puppet to Vietnam, China, and Russia, first of all, the one-party regime of the Lao People's Revolutionary Party of Marxism-Leninism is serving no purpose of peace, independence, democracy, unification, and prosperity like what it claims to do to the Lao population of 7.4 million people. Vietnam is using this treaty to dominate Laos by sending Vietnamese troops and the so-called Vietnamese experts stationed inside the country for security and official governance. the intervention of national security and stability in such an arrangement has cost the Lao government very dearly in money and resources for the exchange, with losses more colossal than when Vietnam invaded Laos in 1480 to 1490, more than 500 years ago. Maybe Vietnam didn't know about mining natural resources then, but they do now. With China, after the Sino-Vietnamese War in 1979 to 1991, Laos-China bilateral cooperation has strengthened, given China to expand the One Belt, One Road initiative. The Communist China expansion of dominant power economically oppressed Laos with One Belt, One Road projects of 4 highways in the country, with that threats diplomacy to the total cost of $17.8 billion US dollars, including $5.9 billion electric multiple unit EMU railway, which serve no purpose of the poor population of 80% in Laos, with earnings of less than $5 US per day. This is the aggressive invasion of taking over the country's national resources as exchange for the debts. These debts include special economic zone cooperation, or lower the total of 18 provinces with projects in thousands of hectares of land lease for up to 99 years, causing millions of population to be displaced by force away from their livelihood against their will. And similarly, mining project deals for foreign oligarchs owned by Zhao, or my intention to share with you today is the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone of the King's Romance Casino in the North Province of Bokeo, owned by Zhao Wei gangster, of 3,000 hectares of land in 2007. The Zhao Wei transnational criminal organization, which were imposed sanctions by the US Treasury Department in 2018 for its transnational criminal acts in drugs and money laundering, including wildlife and human trafficking. This is the very criminal act of the Lao PDR government to officially allow the Zhao Wei gangster to operate inside Laos. On top of all these special economic zone projects, Lao PDR government is declaring to be the battery for Asian countries in building as many as 100 dams in the country, including the multinational river Mekong, which put human and animal, both on land and in the water, in stresses like the fish migration and the fish stock, which feeds 90 million people from downstream of the Mekong, like from China, people from China, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam annually. What a coincidence with Russia. Lao PDR and Russia, with the military operations in partnership cooperation in recent years, started with the 6th East Asia Summit Foreign Ministers meeting in July 2016 in Vientiane, Laos. The war in Ukraine. According to most Russians, what is happening in Ukraine now is a military operation against the Nazi Ukrainian. But to all of us outside Russia, we call it a gruesome invasion of Ukraine by Russia, killing thousands of civilians, including women and children. According to the opposition leader, of the Russian Federation in jail cell now, Mr. Alexei Navalny, called this invasion, this is Mr. Vladimir Putin's stupid war. Laos and Russia have long had a defense relationship that extends across several realms, including military education, law enforcement, cooperation, and military sales. The democratic countries of the West, including the US, are helping Laos with grants for clearing of UXO and unexploded ordnance every year. But Russia sent in a team of Russian troops to do this job in 2019, only to clear an area of around 500 hectares of unexploded ordnance, or UXO, in Phon Savan in the Siang Khong province to build a military base and an airport. Ladies and gentlemen, we want today to be a democracy day for all over the world. In the case of the Lao PDR, my conclusion is this. Lao PDR government is creating aggression activities against its own citizens with corruption, land grabs, and project deals for foreign investors, and with very little infrastructure projects in creating jobs for all Lao nationals, causing problems in human trafficking for people trying to look for jobs outside Laos, namely in Thailand. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Joshua Cooper mentioned many SDGs. I will concentrate on the Lao people to concentrate on the SDG 4 for research and education. Education for children, education for youth, education for adults, for the whole population to see the future for themselves, what sort of government that they want. We want democracy, but not turning national resources into capital, which the Lao Communist government do now for the sake of corruption and the sustainability of power politics, authoritarian regime. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Feng Saksadi from Australia. And we are approaching now Europe. We are approaching Brussels via Canada. Therefore, I'm giving now the floor to Mr. Toom Manikan from Canada, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And I'm really happy to see everyone today, especially President of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos and Joshua Cooper. I'm happy to see everyone. And my name is Toom Manikan, a delegation of Alliance for Democracy in Laos, chapter of Canada. And I would like to say I'm happy to see the Cambodian, my neighbor, to come to in this meeting, to not especially, but I will talk about the human rights, dams, deforestation, and mining. The human rights in Asia, especially in Laos. Laos PDR had been helped and supported a lot of other countries around the world to teach them the law and how to reach the 17 Sustainable Development Goal, human rights, good governance, and human resources. They had treaty agreement with the European Council from 1997 to be complete by 2020. But it never complete because the Lao government betrayed Lao people and lied to the European Council. They actually did that. They made the law just to protect themselves, not to protect Lao citizens. That is violation of the human right. The EU had made other treaty from 2021 to 2025 with aid 550 billion euros should be complete by 2025, have a good governance. They are at the same time continuing deforestation and building the dams in the Mekong River at Champasak province, Laos. The Pungoi Dam project will cost the $2.4 billion had been announced in April 26, 2022, expected to begin construction in 2022 in this year. The Pungoi Dam project will cover total area of about 200 hectares, including houses, paddy fields, gardens, and forests. It will be affect the 7 cities, 88 villages, including 100% affect Champasak province. 142 families, about 800 people will lose their agricultural lands and will move out from that area soon. In April 15, 2022, China released the water from the dam in China. People along the Mekong River in Chiang district, Chiang Rai province, Thailand were affected a lot and lost everything in the flood. Or whenever China closed or released, only open the dams, it greatly affects the farmer and fishermen living alongside the Mekong River of all the country lower part of Chinese dams. And every time the farm were flooded, and the farmer also cried because they lost their agriculture, jobs, income, and food. The officer of the International Mekong River Commission spoke to condition of anonymity and told the Radio Free Asia on April 2022. The Lao Water Resource Department told RFA the same day that in the same direction, no notification had been received from China. So whenever the release of water from the dam in China will not only increase the level of the Mekong River in Borgel, Laos, and Chiang Rai province, Thailand, but also Mekong River of the upper part of the Sai Nyaburi dams is rise to 0.7 to 0.7 meter. That's why we urge to the Lao government and investor to stop building more dam in Mekong River. Building the dam is not a green development. It is destroying agricultural land The mining in Laos is also destroying lifestyle and Lao people losing their agricultural land and houses in concession area and never had compensation, and the chemical is running from the mining, also killing fish and pets. Now, my recommendation today are: the first, Lao PDR must stop deforestation and end it mining concession and stop building the dam immediately. Second, Lao must follow international rule and United Nations treaty. And third, Lao administration must be modified seriously in this time. And finally, I urge strongly to all the world, we need you all to show Laos and Cambodia country to come back for real democracy, real freedom, and real justice for all. To protect the rule of law, to protect the security of the world, to protect peace of the world, to protect freedom, democracy, human rights, and justice for Ukraine and Taiwan also. Please, thank you for your attention. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Manikan from Canada. And we are now back in Brussels. And to conclude this meeting, I'm giving now the floor to Buntorne Chanchalavong Visa. Please.
Thank you, Frank, again. We are today very happy to be here in Brussels, to work together with you from Cambodia, Ms. Rasant Sant, and your colleagues. Thank you so much to Frank, Mr. Frank Swabenholt. We are very happy that you to cooperation with us, with Lao activists, Cambodia activists. We hope this cooperation will be in future to change our country to democracy, real democracy, and respect human rights. We thank you participate today, journalists or activists and organization, everyone from USA. I thank Mr. Joshua Cooper. We had hard work together with the UN Human Rights Council and its General Assembly to protection human rights in Laos and in the world. I thank Mr. Peng Saksri from Australia. Our activists in Australia is very important for us. The government of Australia is very active for support for protection human rights in Laos and have many funds for Laos too. Canada, we have our activists in Canada for democracy in Laos too. Thank you, Mr. Thumanichan. He is representative from Canada activists. His president, Mr. Kamban Anontisent, is president of ADL chapter of Canada. He is very active president of chapter of Canada too. I have to thank everyone in USA. We have very active our member in Japan, in Cambodia, in Thailand, especially inside Laos. Today, we have a demonstration in front of the European Parliament We have many protest letters from our activists from Laos directly. The people in Laos, they don't have right to demonstrate, to change our country to democracy, to human rights, to justice, to protection our environment in our country. But today, we have this place in Brussels. It's very important for all. This place is place for our hope to change our country to democracy, to respect human rights, to our country independent from China, from Vietnam, and now from Russia too. We must work together with you, not only the Lao activists, Cambodia activists, European activists, in ASEAN too. We need to work together to support the democratic system in the world strongly. Now we know the war in Ukraine is not very good for us in the whole world. We know this is dictatorship from Russia empire, from China empire, from Vietnam in Asia country empire. This country is dictatorship. We need to change this dictatorship country from Russia, China, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and in other countries in the world. We hope now it's time to change in the world. Thank you, friends. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.